The one that comes to mind is property in North Arkansas, borders a river, and that river has two endangered species in it. The yellow-cheeked darter and the speckled pocketbook, which is a mussel, a clam.
I love those names.
The threats to those species are sedimentation and pollution, which forestry operations can increase those things into rivers like that. So,
welcome to Forest Matters, a podcast about sustainable forest management, forest carbon development, and the opportunities available to landowners through global carbon markets. Forest Matters is brought to you by NativState, the leading forest carbon development company for small private landowners.
Well, welcome back to NativState's Forest Matters podcast. I've got Kevin Wood here today, and Kevin is our wildlife biologist and is going to talk to us today about high conservation value and just give us some insight into what that means and how that relates to forest certification. So, Kevin, so happy that you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sure. Can you give our viewers and listeners just some background on how you came to be at NativState? What sort of things do you do for the company?
Sure. So I'm the wildlife biologist for the company. I'm a certified wildlife biologist, certified senior ecologist. Been here about a year. Before that, I managed some public land for about 10 years.
Great. So what sort of projects do you work on at NativState? Or let me back up. Did you know anything about forest carbon credits before you started doing wildlife biology at NativState?
Not much. I'd heard about them, but really didn't know what they were all about.
Okay, great. Well, let's jump right in then. We're going to talk about HCV, high conservation value. So give us the overview. What does that mean? And what kinds of things are we talking about with HCV?
Sure. So high conservation value is something that was created specifically for FSC, the Forest Stewardship Council, for certification. So got the definition here. It's actually a separate group called the HCV Network, High Conservation Value Network, that created these for FSC. So an HCV is a biological, ecological, social, or cultural value of outstanding significance or critical importance. And there's actually 6 of these HCVs. Mm-hmm. And remember, Forest Stewardship Council, FSC, is a global certification body. So, some of these things don't necessarily apply here in the United States, but they're more for that global scenario.
Sure.
So you've got species diversity is one, landscape level ecosystems and mosaics is 2, ecosystems and habitats, ecosystem services, community needs, and cultural values. So we're really, really focused on just maybe 3 of these, species diversity, ecosystems, and then cultural values.
Okay.
So like the species diversity, we're looking for threatened and endangered species. Mm-hmm. And even if you have a threatened and endangered species on your property, that doesn't necessarily make it an HCV. There's a little more to it, and we may get into that a little later.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's bookmark that and come back to that.
Talk about how we go about determining an HCV. And then like landscape level ecosystems, those are 500, 1,000 acres that are rare ecosystems, and we just don't really have those in the eastern United States on that scale.
Okay.
If they are, they're public land normally. So in the private land setting, there's just not many of those.
Just because of the size of that.
Correct. Okay. So it's a possibility if you're a super large landowner, but most folks aren't going to have the land base to meet that criteria. And then ecosystems and habitats, you're looking for rare ecosystems like, say, a blackland prairie or something like that that's not super common, that we want to make sure we're protecting those.
And we have some
areas.
projects that have blackland prairies, right?
Right.
Where are those?
more in like South Arkansas, Southwest Arkansas. It's going to be some of that area.
All right. What kind of species would you normally find in a place like that?
Well, you're looking at rare plant species that just have to have those open conditions to grow.
I gotcha. And then there are going to be other species that rely on those plants, I imagine.
Correct.
Yeah, but that's for another episode.
Yeah. And then you've got the cultural values as well. So, we're interested in any indigenous peoples areas that may need to be protected. And most of the time, those, say, the Native American tribes will have a list of areas that they know about that's important to their culture. So we'll ask them about that. They have some databases they can run that through and tell us whether there's any sites near or on the properties we're managing.
Gotcha. So really the two that stand out the most listening to you are they're talking about those particular species, endangered species, and then those ecosystems that are rare or very special.
Right.
Okay, great. Let's see. So help me understand, walk me through the HCV process. Like we kind of touched on this earlier, when you go out and you visit a property, how do you determine that it meets one of those areas that we talked about?
So it really starts out with a desk-based analysis. So we take a shape file. So that's just a digitized file of your property. Run that through a couple of databases. So just Arkansas, for an example, you've got the Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission. We'll send that file to them. They have a database of where threatened and endangered rare species are located. They'll tell us, hey, that species is near here, or we have records of it on that property in some cases. And then you've got a database with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It'll tell you, hey, this project could affect these certain endangered species. There's another organization called NatureServe. They're actually a branch of the Nature Conservancy, or used to be. So it's like a clearinghouse of rare, threatened, and endangered species locations. So
Gotcha.
They'll give you some generalized areas of where these species might be found. And so using all that data and some other sources as well, I'll kind of go through there and look at these criteria. We've got a kind of a checklist with some guiding questions on it. So is it endemic, say? Is it an endemic species only found in a certain area? So species with very small home ranges or global ranges are going to be more susceptible to extirpation or harm than something that, say, its range is half the United States.
Gotcha.
So you look at all those factors, and then we may actually have to go out on the property and do a survey to see if that species is there or not. And so to answer the question, it all depends. It's,
of course.
Depends on the species, depends on where it's at, what
Gotcha.
what we're trying to accomplish there.
So you start off with the data that's been done of what's likely to be there, what you might see. And then if it ticks some of those boxes, then you might go out there and actually look around.
Right.
So does that apply, like say the data says, okay, there might be this certain bird out there, say a red cockaded woodpecker. You go out there, you don't necessarily see one, but you know that habitat supports that endangered species. Does that make it HCV?
Not necessarily. So what it's supposed to be greater than normal concentrations of that species.
I gotcha.
So it takes a lot to make it an HCV, really.
Okay, because remind me again, tie that back into FSC certification. So that would be part of that requirement for certification. So it's going to be a little bit, have higher expectations for demonstrating it.
Correct.
Right? Okay. Great. So, Can you give me an example of, I'm just curious, I like to have something concrete. Is there an example of an HCV, whether it's an area, ecosystem, or a species that you've encountered on one of the projects?
Sure. The one that comes to mind is property in North Arkansas, borders a river, and that river has two endangered species in it, the yellow-cheeked darter and the speckled pocketbook, which is a mussel, a clam.
I love those names.
So, looking at the data, I saw, hey, these species may occur here, and ended up doing a consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they confirmed, yes, those species are found along this property in that river. So, the threats to those species are sedimentation and pollution, which forestry operations can increase those things into rivers like that. So, once you identify an HCV, you have to have a management plan and then a monitoring plan as well. So,
okay, so that leads me to my next question. What does this mean for landowners once you've identified a high conservation value on their property? What does that mean for them?
yeah. So again, it's going to depend on what the species is, but in that particular case, it was just a buffer along the river. So in any forestry operation, you have what's called an SMZ, a streamside management zone. So that's normally a 30 to 100 foot buffer along the river that you're going to do either reduced harvest or no harvest at all. So I believe in that case, we said we're going to leave a 150 foot buffer or 200 foot buffer because it's a pretty steep bank going into the river. So the steeper the slope, the greater the buffer is going to be.
Gotcha.
So just a 200 foot buffer, don't do any forestry operations in that area, and then our monitoring is going to be once a year. We go out there and make sure those forest conditions are correct for, good water quality.
Okay, so it sounds like the recommendations are really just good forest management.
Correct.
Things that you would do in a conservation program, in a forest carbon program to protect your streams and water quality. So it sounds like something that a landowner would do normally to protect protect the streams in that case.
So you don't want to look at these as, I have an HCV on my property, I'm restricted from doing things. We want to inform the landowners that something's there. So a lot of landowners don't realize, hey, there's something that is rare in this stream that runs along my property, and people care about what they know about. So that's the goal here, is to help the landowners, inform them what's there, and then through our management plans help the landowner along to make sure we're doing the right things to protect that species.
Yeah, that's exciting, though, to find out that you've got something rare and interesting on your property, I imagine, especially if what you need to do to protect that is going to be part of your management plan anyway.
Right.
So how does NativState support landowners? And you mentioned monitoring and putting together that plan.
Yeah, so in the forest management plan that every landowner gets, there'll be a section in there if you have an HCV or if you have an endangered species or a possible endangered species, it will be in there. And there's some management recommendations in there of what that species needs and how to manage your forest to benefit those species. So those are in there. We've got a team of foresters that you can contact. You can contact me as well to help with any management activities going on.
Well, that sounds great. I feel like I know a whole lot more about this. I hope our listeners have learned something about. I liked what you said about, being. It's interesting that, what did you say, that people care about what they
know about.
What they know about. Yeah, I think that's a good takeaway in a lot of areas. Well, Kevin Wood, thank you for being with us. We'll talk to you again in another episode and dig a little more deeply into biodiversity and ecosystems and things like that. So,
sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Forest Matters is brought to you by NativState, the leading forest carbon development company for small private landowners. Learn more at nativestate.com.